Hey y'all. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of information just because it was a lot and unfortunately things just did not pan out like I expected them to today. So today we taught lesson 26, and basically lesson 26, the original part of lesson 26 goes over the strategies that I taught in the first video, which is the basics of breaking it down into a 10 and a 1, circling your 10s, making your 10s number sentence and your 1s number sentence. None of the criteria changed. The second half of lesson 26 was showing an additional strategy to help them break down the numbers in a different way. Okay, so basically this is what I just explained. So 4 steps, the 4 criteria did not change. This was all of the same thing. They also allowed them to go a step further by maybe breaking down like 4 into 2 and 2 or 1 and 3 if they needed to break it down, but it's not required for them to learn it, so I didn't really stress that very much. The whole point of it was to grasp this lesson. Now, the issue that I ran into with the lesson is that a lot of them were struggling to master this, so I couldn't really move on to the second strategy very much. I introduced it, but I felt like it kind of threw them off and confused them a little bit, so I just figured I'm going to go ahead and stick with the basics, stick with what they already know, and we're just going to go from there because it wasn't working trying to teach them the new way when they haven't completely mastered the old way. So basically some of the issues that we were running into, some of the issues that you might want to look for is when they're coming to these problems. I had a couple students doing 10 plus 4 equals 14, and then they would do 14 plus 30. They would take this total that they got here and add those two together. I'm trying to teach them that your first number sentence goes in the circle. So I know a couple friends were having that issue. If your child is having that issue, just make sure you stress with them that the first number sentence is your tens number sentence. It's a tens because these have 2 parts. They go in the circle. They are your first number sentence. Now, like the next issue that I was having, I know a couple friends were adding the 10s to the 1s, which isn't necessarily wrong. I wouldn't take it as wrong if they could still get the correct answer, but then they were adding things wrong. A lot of the issues that I saw today were simple mistakes as far as like counting 1 or adding. So let me kind of go deeper into what the new part of the lesson was supposed to be for today. I know a couple of the kids grasped it and they really liked it, and if they choose to do it that way, that's fine. But I do know that it was also a little more difficult because some of them don't fully understand the concept of making a new 10 yet. Okay, so this was the new part of the lesson, the new strategy that a couple of the kids were really having issues with. They weren't quite understanding how to make a new 10. So for example, they would get a problem like 19 plus 13. And what I say when I mean making a new 10, I mean how many more does 19 need to make 20? They're supposed to tell you 1. So they would break 13 into 1 and 12. Okay, so 1 plus 12 makes 13. And then they would circle the new 10, which would be 19 and 1. And so their first number sentence will be 19 plus 1 equals 20. And then 20 plus 12 would equal 32. Okay, so that's the new strategy. And although they did pretty well with the number 19, when we moved on to numbers like 18 plus 15 or 17 plus 16, they kept writing 1 as how many more the new 10 needed. Some students understood this method. Some kids know what it needs to make a new 10. Some kids have not quite grasped that yet. The strategies are not different. They're still having to break down a number bond, circle your number sentence, your first number sentence, write your 2 number sentences. The strategies have not changed. What has changed is how they choose to break down the number. There is not a right way and there is not a wrong way. If they choose to break it down into a 10 and a 4, that's fine. If they choose to break it down into a 4, or that would have been the same thing, sorry. If they choose to break it down into a 1 and a 12 to make a new 10, that is fine too. It is totally up to your child. There is not a right way or a wrong way. My recommendation as a teacher, what I see as being the best strategy, the easiest strategy, the strategy that they know, the strategy that they're comfortable with, is to break it down into a 10 and some 1s. So if your child understands the other way, that is fine. If they choose to do it that way, that is fine. My recommendation as a teacher, what I see, where they're going to go with the curriculum, I would recommend this way because they're always going to have to know how to add 10s no matter what. So this is just the way that I would recommend how to do it. It is totally up to you. Tomorrow's lesson 27 is optional. So I will put problems on the board and they will choose how to solve the strategy. There is not, you have to solve it this way or you have to solve it this way. They get the choice. It is their choice to choose. On their math test, it is not a right or wrong way. If they choose to do it one way, that is fine. If they choose to do it the other way, that is fine. As long as they are showing the 4 steps with the criteria and finding the correct answer. Now, like I said, one of the main issues that I was having was that they were not counting on the correct way or they were adding the wrong way. Silly little mistakes, but mistakes that are easily fixable. So basically the reason I got on here and I videoed this was because I wanted y'all to see what this lesson today that was taught, which was a strategy that confused them. Not everybody, but a lot of them were very confused. I understand. I don't think that that's the easier strategy, but it is an option for students who like that strategy better, which is the point of Common Core, is the point that we teach them all of these different strategies and they are allowed to choose what works best in their brain. So if that strategy works for them, that's perfectly fine. They get to choose. My recommendation is breaking it down into a 10 and some 1s. So tomorrow they will get more practice if they're not understanding the homework. I did tell them to do the front of the problem set and the front of the homework because the back of them are when they moved into this new strategy, which I said a lot of them were not understanding. So front of the problem set, front of the homework. If your child is still having trouble, just shoot me a message. I'm going to pull some friends in the morning as soon as we get to school when their brains are fresh and ready to go and just do a quick review of that. So if you have any questions or if you need anything else, please let me know. And if there's anything else that can help y'all, just shoot me a message. Bye, y'all.